Hi, I'm Mr. eTutor, your mystery tutor here at mysterytutor.com, and welcome to video module 11-5. In this module, I'll be discussing the best way to tackle the history subject tests. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've worked with students who have already wasted months and months of their lives trying to memorize every single historical fact about the history of America or the world. This is absolutely the wrong way to go about it. And if you try to approach the test by memorizing every single fact that appears on it, you're not going to do very well when you go take the test for real. Here's why. The history subject tests will try to confuse you by asking very detailed and specific questions about things that you probably never covered in class. As an example, get out your copy of this book, the College Board's Official Subject Test Study Guide, and turn to page 72, question 31. That question asks you something about the way that the Pueblo Indians responded to Christianity. Now, I'm willing to bet that no matter how much of an American history buff you are, you probably have never specifically studied the way that Pueblo Indians responded to Christianity. So you may be wondering how it's possible to answer this question. Well, the College Board doesn't actually expect you to have studied anything about the way different Indian groups responded to Christianity. Instead, you are supposed to know something broadly speaking about Native American cultures, and you're supposed to know something broadly speaking about Christianity itself. If you know those things, only one of the 5 answer choices makes any sense whatsoever, and that is the answer choice that says that the Native American culture adopted the Christian God as one of its own gods. We would know this because you're probably familiar with the idea that Native American cultures were polytheistic, and you're probably familiar with the idea that Christianity involves a god. Those are the 2 facts that you need to know to answer this question. The other answer choices are all completely ludicrous. For instance, the answer choice that mentions Christian practices helping the Native Americans' agriculture doesn't make any sense whatsoever if you know anything about Native Americans and Christianity, because you would know that Native Americans are pretty good at agriculture, and Christianity does not address agriculture specifically in any meaningful way. This type of strategy is the thing you want to apply when you're taking this test. So when you see a particular question that seems to be about some extraordinarily detailed thing that you've never actually learned in any of your classes, pause for a second and remember, only one of the 5 answer choices will make any sense at all, and the other 4 will not make any sense if you know the basic underlying facts rather than the specific details. And the basic underlying facts are what you want to prepare for. So, when you're reviewing the questions that you've answered incorrectly, whether it's on the PDF or in the actual complete subject test in the College Board's book, look at each question that you've missed, and rather than trying to learn the specific detailed fact that the question seems to be about, take a step back and ask yourself, what are the major broad themes that would have helped me answer this question if I had understood them? For instance, in the question I just mentioned about the Pueblo Indians, you don't want to take away from that question the fact that the Pueblo Indians embraced the Christian God as one of their own gods. That particular point is not going to come up again on the test, I can just about guarantee you. Instead, if you had missed that question, I would want you to pause for a second and think to yourself, okay, this question was mostly about the Pueblo Indians and Christianity, and if I missed it, that means there's something crucial about Pueblo Indians and or Christianity that I don't get. And then you'd want to go back and review those broad themes, the ideas of Native American cultures and how they reacted with European settlers in the Americas, and also the idea of the Christian religion and how that impacted the development of American history. And again, you don't need to know either of those things in a terribly deep, detailed way. You just need to be familiar with the broad strokes. Keep coming back to those broad, basic, general ideas. And the more of those things you can build up together, the more easily you'll be able to figure out which of the 5 answer choices is correct when you see a question that seems to be about something you've never studied before. This applies equally well to the infamous questions that give you a quote and then ask you who made that statement. You are not supposed to have memorized every single statement made by every single historical figure in the development of America or the world. Instead, you're supposed to be familiar, generally speaking, with the basic principles and beliefs of certain key figures in history. And when you see a quote that espouses those beliefs, you should be able to recognize who probably said it. So those questions are not asking you to recognize a quote that you've memorized. They're only asking you to look at the answer choices and see which of those 5 people would have said something like this. Then you pick that person. This logic applies to all of the history tests. That's how they should be approached. So don't waste your time making flashcards for every single historical fact and figure you can think of. Instead, remember broad strokes and practice the ability to combine those broad general ideas in certain specific ways as necessary to answer individual questions that you might see. Also, one other thing, because I think I forgot to mention it in an earlier module. If you buy this book to prepare for the history tests, you will only find one American history test and one world history test in this book. There is another book that contains 2 American history tests and 2 world history tests together. It's a smaller book, and that you're going to need to buy separately from the College Board, just like everything else. So if you're going to take the history tests and you want the extra history test to practice with, you will need to buy the special history test book. By the way, one of the American history tests and one of the world history tests that appears in that special book I was telling you about that contains 2 of each kind, one each of those is the test that already appears in the gigantic subject test book. So don't think you're going to be getting an extra 2 tests. Unfortunately, you're only going to be getting 1 extra test of each type, even though the smaller book contains 4 total tests. Another advantage to owning the smaller test is that it contains decent, not great, but decent solutions that will explain most of the historical facts surrounding the correct answers to the questions. Of course, like I said, memorizing these facts is not going to be what you want to do, but they will often help to jog your memory. You also want to make sure when you're reviewing the test after you take it that you understand not only the correct answer choice, but also why the 4 incorrect answer choices are not any good. And for this, you might find that these solutions are especially lacking that the College Board gives you. If you have this problem, of course, you know where I'm going to tell you to go. Head over to www.mysterytutorvault.com and voice any comments or questions or concerns or anything like that in the appropriate threads in that forum, and I will be more than happy to give them my personal attention. So remember, it's just about learning the general ideas and underlying trends that influence the type of history you're taking the test for. Focus on developing an understanding of those broad concepts and applying those broad concepts as necessary to individual questions, and that's going to get you the highest score in the least amount of time with the fewest number of flashcards filled out and memorized for no reason. As always, if you focus on using what you know to separate out the right answer choice from the wrong answer choices, you'll see it's easier than you think.